Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be doing a walk around on a Toyota Tundra prototype that is basically a full-on like Raptor-ish Tundra, if that makes sense. And so with that being said, we're going to do a walk around on this truck, and then I'm going to compare it to a TRD Pro in the video as well. So I'll do a walk around on that as well. And so with that being said, let's get into the video. Let's go over this Toyota Tundra Baja. So just like the TRD Pro, it does have the hybrid powertrain under the hood. So it's good for 437 horsepower, 583 pound-feet of torque. Goes through a 10-speed automatic transmission. It's a twin-turbo 3.5-liter V6, and again, paired to a hybrid system. You guys can see the TRD Pro badge there because this is built off of a TRD Pro. We've got the signature Tundra headlights, and you guys can see just how wide the front fenders are. Got the marker lights there and the front grille with the old school Toyota logo there, and then notice the light bar just like what you got on the TRD Pro. Got the camera just down below that, and then you guys can see the accessory lights there at the top of the bumper, and definitely think that's a cool look. This does have a high ground clearance front bumper, which definitely lends to a much more aggressive aesthetic, and you guys can actually see the shocks and the suspension through the bumper, which is pretty cool, just like what you could see on like the Gen 2 Raptor, for example. Got the TRD skid plate there at the bottom. And overall, all the elements on the front end, I think, look great. You guys can see the tires. They're actually 37s, which is pretty impressive, just like what you can get on the Performance Pack with the Raptor. And let me tell you, these tires make this Tundra look so much more aggressive than the regular TRD Pro. And I'll have a clip at the end with the regular TRD Pro so you guys can actually see like the size difference pretty much. And then you guys can see the shocks there from Fox, all that fun stuff. Carbon fiber fender flares. I thought that was a pretty interesting choice. And then you guys can see again with the fenders themselves, super wide, just like what you have on the Raptor and the TRX to give it that Baja truck aesthetic. And then you've got the side steps that also double as like rock rails there. And then you guys can see the mirrors here, which are just normal Tundra mirrors with their two-tone. Same thing with the door handles on the the passenger side rather. And then again, carbon fiber fender flare, and then you can see the tire and wheel set up there in the back. And again, it just has that cool off-roader aesthetic to it, which I think is great. And then you guys can see the shock and suspension setup in the rear. So just like the regular Tundra TRD Pro, it has the 5-link coil suspension, and then you've got the more advanced shocks from Fox. And so yeah, it's a really good setup. And then popping down below, here's kind of like a better look at that whole suspension and shock setup. And then you guys can see the exhaust, how that kind of weaves through. And that's something they do on the TRD Pros to help out with ground clearance, is they don't have the exhaust go all the way out the back, because then that would make the departure angle a little bit worse. So it's cool they did that. Got the signature taillights. Oh, also, again, the back fender is also wider. And you guys can see just how good this truck looks. And in a vacuum, it's kind of like a little bit hard. Like, it looks good, but it's kind of hard to tell. But once you see the regular TRD Pro, you'll be like, wow. So you guys can see you've got the two spare tires there at the back, again, 37s. And then notice that I just zoomed in so you guys can see they are, in fact, 37s, because sometimes it's hard to tell size in a video. And then notice that you've got like the jack and everything just in case you get stranded off-road. And then you got the marker lights there on the back with the Army print there on the back of the tailgate. And then the lights there in the rear on the bumper, parking sensors. And then you do still have the bed step. And then they kept the bumper stock. So this is just a regular Tundra bumper. They didn't change anything there. Notice that the width all comes from the fender there above, whereas down below is the same as stock, if you guys are wondering with that. And of course, I mentioned the taillights earlier, but now I actually point to them. A little bit out of order, but it's okay. And then you guys can see, again, the full side view here with the truck. And there's another Tundra right next to it just for size comparison. That one's a 1794 TRD off-road. Just so you guys can see the height difference and the width difference as well between the two trucks. It's pretty substantial. And you guys also notice there's a rack at the top with lights with this Tundra Baja. And here's a quick look at the interior. It's got the like red interior, which I think looks really good, especially in contrast to the white on this particular truck. Got the larger infotainment system on top of that. Full digital gauge cluster, all the stuff that comes with the TRD Pro, this truck has. They didn't really change the interior on this. It's all exterior modifications, which I'm completely fine with, because if you're wanting to build like a Baja truck, you don't really need to change the interior. Now, here's a regular TRD Pro. You guys probably remember this from the Salt Lake Auto Show, because I did a video on this truck when it was there. But I just wanted to include this because they brought it to the Chicago Auto Show, just so you guys can see the difference between the trucks. So there's a lot of elements that are the same, like the marker lights, the Toyota logo as well. And then you guys can see the whole front grille camera with also the light bar there. And then notice the Tundra logo with the fog lights. And then you guys can see here with the fender flares a little bit different. And then obviously coming down below, you can see you still get a skid plate underneath, but it's not as like prominent because this doesn't have the high ground clearance front bumper like the Baja version has. And then the height difference is huge. A lot of that's the tires, but also it looked like the Baja version had a little bit of a suspension lift too. You guys can see the tire and wheel setup, not nearly as aggressive, right? Don't have 37s on this thing, which I think the TRD Pro should have at least 35s. That's just my personal opinion. And then you guys can see the suspension and shock setup here. Still have Fox shocks on the TRD Pro. You got the splash guard right there on the side, and then you guys can see the mirrors all blacked out on this one. Door handles as well. Cool texturing on them. And you guys can see there at the bottom. Notice here, once we take a step back with a full side profile, it's just, if you guys are wondering, with the TRD Pro, it's about the same height as like a regular Tundra is what it looks like when you're just looking at it in person from a road presence perspective. And then you guys can see the shock setup here in the rear. And again, you got the marker lights. Something that I forgot to mention when we were walking around the other Tundra is it didn't have marker lights on the fender flares. It only had them in the grille and on the back tailgate. So technically, it's not street legal, funny enough. Got the TRD Pro logo there on the bed. And then you guys can see the bed itself fully empty. You're not going to get a tire carry or anything like that from the factory with the TRD Pro. That's not what it's all about. It's kind of just like a in-between off-road package between like a Baja truck and like a basic off-road package. So the only truck that really competes against it is the Silverado ZR2. This doesn't compete against like a Ford Raptor. Obviously, that concept Tundra does, but this version of the Tundra doesn't. And then you guys can see again with the departure exhaust is what we'll call it, how they have it set up. And really cool looking. And then the interior on this one wasn't as like bright and vibrant. It was just like a black interior. But it still has like the mark at the top steering wheel, digital gauge cluster, big infotainment system, TRD Pro there on the seats, and then full panoramic sunroof. All that fun stuff. So just as loaded up from the interior perspective, but it doesn't look as pretty. But the exterior color I definitely love on this. It's a really good looking color. But yeah, that's the Tundra Baja and then the TRD Pro.